Hey guys, Omni here. We are back for our breakdown of episode 4 of Moon Knight. If you haven't seen my reaction, it's on the channel right now. Go check it out. It was quite the wild episode, especially with that ending. You know, it's one of the few times I feel somewhat grateful to not be included in all the preview screenings that people get because a lot of the reviewers, as we know, the critics that got to see the show early, got the first 4 episodes. And I cannot imagine having to sit on that cliffhanger for what, like 5 weeks, 6 weeks? Jeez. It'd be driving me insane wanting to know what happens next. But guys, we're checking out New Rockstar's breakdown for the episode, for the hidden nuggets, details, Easter eggs, and little clues throughout the episode that allude to what more is going on behind the scenes. But that said, guys, if you're not subscribed to New Rockstars, check these guys out. Grab some of their shirts. And yeah, man, let's dive in.
Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Eric Voss, and this is a breakdown of Moon Knight Episode 4, which, like Marc and Steven, made me scream, "Holy hippopotamus!" Turns out I wasn't that delusional for thinking some of this could be all in Steven's mind, or could I still be delusional? Probably still a bit delusional. I mean, who knows what's going on? So I'm gonna break down this episode shot by shot for the interesting details you might have missed to best explain one of the wildest twists we've ever seen in the MCU. And remember to support New Rockstars by checking out our Moon Knight-inspired Tomb of the Moon God shirt. Limited supply, running out fast. Get it over at newrockstarsmerch.com, and when you get the shirt, you're gonna unlock the added option to write in a custom shout out that will appear in the bottom.
You know, I've bought a bunch of their shirts up to this point, but I've never actually used that feature.
So we begin this episode upside down as the avatar for Osiris places Khonshu's Ushapti in a cubbyhole among several others. Our view only finally orients, righting itself on this close-up of Khonshu, making him our compass, our true north for what is real this whole episode, because without him this hour, Marc, Steven, all of us are lost. I like how Osiris's avatar takes this uncertain beat after placing the Ushapti, since they have clearly stonified a ton of deities, not a healthy sign, like a warden wondering, everyone is now in prison. Are the ones who's straight? No, it's everyone else who's wrong. Also, Osiris may be wondering if he could be the next one. Among these figurines are a whole bunch of them, one with curved horns, another shorter one to the far left. A lot of these look like the larger statues among the chamber last episode towering over them. I wonder if the 5 members of the Ennead may have Ushapti'd their ranking elders like Atum and Shu. That could explain why 4 of the 9 Ennead members are missing. I also think that Tauret may be among these figurines, and I'll explain what that means.
It'd be a good point
because in the closing credits of every episode, on the back right, a Tauret Ushapti appears alongside these others, which fill in the cubby holes we see in the opening shot. That tells us that Tauret must be banished, which is a very important key to how we interpret the final scene.
Throughout this opening scene, we hear several voices chanting.
Good catch. The music in this show so far has been really, really ominous and great.
As if these trapped gods and the statues are all haunting Osiris, demanding to be freed. Then out in the desert, a scarab crawls up a mound and flies off. Now the scarab was of course the compass that was used to find Amit's Ushapti. And now even this scarab compass is like, peace out you mortals. So, now by the way, the hieroglyphics on that scarab were translated to the phrase, "O Khepri, amid his boats, primeval one, whose corporeality is infinity, may you rescue Osiris, Amenhotep, true of voice." Khepri being the sun deity represented by the scarab, which Egyptians associated with the way it rolled its dung across the sand with the way Khepri rolled the sun across the sky. Now, remember last episode, Steven joined Khonshu in casting that illusion to make the heavens look like they did 2,000 years prior. And when that happened,
I like how he says illusion this time around as opposed to what MT had said last week. Anyway, back on.
Little detail I liked, Steven's Mr. Knight mask wilted away, matching Khonshu's dissipation. Just a cool way of showing how Steven was losing a part of himself as well, no longer having the armor and the healing properties that really would have come in handy when Arthur shot him twice in the chest. But a detail that I loved here, whereas past episodes the crescent moon always shined to reflect Khonshu being at his most powerful, now notice how the moon is in its waxing gibbous phase, the exact opposite of the waning crescent in the lunar cycle, which is a cool way of showing Khonshu's inverted, totally weakened state now. Actually, by the way, in the credits of every episode,
dude, I love small details like that, man.
card, it reflects the way the phases of the moon shift episode after episode from waxing crescent to the first quarter to now in this episode, gibbous. Layla pulls a Jurassic Park Dr. Alan Grant
Yes.
and lights a flare to direct Harrow's men away from the passed out Steven, and then insanely throws another lit flare into their box of shells to set them all off like fireworks.
That was my
Even though
first
in the shot
thought
from behind
too,
her,
was
she's
the
clearly
Jurassic
totally
Park
exposed to all of those projectiles
parallel.
as is Steven. Folks, the Indiana Jones antics go way over the top this episode, and
Yes.
I truly think it is by design to suggest Marc could be pulling all this from his Tomb Buster movie. Actually, as they drive into the desert the next morning, these locations were the same parts of Jordan where they shot Indiana Jones: The Last Crusade. So that familiarity is totally intentional.
God, I love that movie.
Calamawy's look in this show and the way she plays Layla definitely.
But in the
evokes
Latin
Rachel Weisz
alphabet,
from the
Jehovah
Mummy
starts
movies.
with an
I really
I.
think these cinematic
J.
parallels are all by design. Layla and Steven agree to keep Marc out of it.
We are not. It's just you and me and the open road.
I'm gonna go on foot from here.
The camera lingers on these 3 bullet holes in the windshield, which you could see as representative of the 3 altars we think make up Marc's mind. The way that the holes can be in there without breaking or shattering the whole thing, because Marc is not broken. Those 3 altars we assume are Marc, Steven, and Jake Lockley. As of this episode, we have not yet met Jake. They pass a goat who stares them down. In addition to the Christian associations between goats and evil, there was that moment with Steven and Harrow in episode 2.
Go. Yes.
Where there is a goat, there is a Harrow. Now, when Steven initially wants to make a move on Layla, Marc punches his own face in the jaw. Another Fight Club reference.
I love that movement,
Essentially
man.
the same thing.
What'd I just say?
And then after
Movement,
going back and forth with
moment.
Layla, Steven finally makes his move, and it is awkward.
I'm gonna go down
Okay.
first
Well, yeah. Great.
before I belay.
Thank you.
Yeah, Steven totally misinterpreted down to mean not belay, but another kind of down, a sex kind. Steven geeks out at the statue.
Smooth, Eric.
They're
Smooth.
just, like, been stand and guard for centuries.
Right? Look, I can't even. So if they just sprang to life right now and asked me a riddle for passage, I'd be thrilled. I'd shit myself, but I'd be thrilled.
Yes, he's referring to the riddle of the
Yep.
Sphinx. The Sphinx being the creature with the haunches of a lion, the wings of a bird. It's best known from Greek mythology, where it has the head of a woman, but in Egyptian mythology, it has the head of a man. To the Greeks, it guards the city of Thebes, where it posed the riddle to Oedipus. What creature has 1 voice, yet becomes 4-footed, and then 2-footed, and then 3-footed? And Oedipus answered, correctly, man, who crawls on all
Yep.
4s as a baby, walks on 2 feet as an adult, and uses a walking stick in old age. 3 beings in 1 also parallels Marc and his altars, each of whom have a different stride, yet speak in 1 voice. And one cannot help but draw a connection to the caned figure of Arthur Harrow, who ends this episode using his walking stick. This is also, of course, a big clue for the reveal of Alexander the Great. For the way Egyptian iconography and obelisks and sphinxes made their way into Greece was because of Alexander's occupation of Egypt and his obsession with Egypt. In the sand, Layla traces the Arabic letters, going from right to left, because that's how Arabic works, Ain and Elif, her father's initials, as we saw her full name on her passport last episode, Layla Abdallah El-Faouly. Abdallah meaning servant of God, which is a bit ironic because Marc is trying to keep her from being a servant to the god Khonshu. While exploring the tunnels, Layla says,
It's a maze.
It's amazing.
No, like there are 6 paths.
Yeah.
I love Steven, man.
of course, since this episode ends by suggesting much of this could have been all in Marc's mind, it's worth noting that the concept of a maze has often been considered a symbol of the subconscious mind, back to Greek mythology,
Yeah.
the labyrinth, and then manifesting in contemporary media like Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, Westworld, and the amazing series Severance. Watch that show, it's so good. This maze
I don't think I've ever heard of
represents
it.
Marc's mind, perhaps the 6 paths representing as many as 6 altars stored inside. But Steven traces out the structure to show how this is modeled on the Eye of Horus and its 6 parts, citing this symbol that some historians interpret to represent the 6 senses of thought, sight, hearing, smell, and taste. According to mythology, Horus's right eye was the sun and the left eye, the moon. And this is his left eye here. So the moon is always present in this show. But in the mythology, there was a fight between Horus and his brother Set, and Set tore out the eye, and the eye is later healed and restored either by Tot or by Hathor, whom we met last episode, which is why the symbol now represents healing and protection. I just like how when Steven clears the sand to trace this, his flashlight now reflects off of the metallic surface beneath to form the Eye of Horus on the ceiling above
Yeah.
them, as if either Horus or Hathor could be watching over their deeds here.
That was a
or this
nice
represents the
detail,
moon
too.
that Khonshu is watching all of this. Then they come across this mummification chamber used by these undead priests who are buried alongside the pharaoh. On the upper level, Marc finds some stuff that he says was used in regeneration rituals, which all just leads to this gore fest in the middle of the episode where the priest extracts organs from Harrow's man and tries to do it to Marc and Layla. Who knows why he's doing this? Layla comes across this gaping pit, reminding us of the chasm that Indiana Jones has to make the leap of faith across.
Jay.
Crusade,
Wait, that's not yet. That's that's after that. That's the optical illusion.
Despite the bad stuff he was involved with, she has
Bridge.
to fend off this priest monster by ripping off his arm and shoving a flare in his face. She loves her flares. 40 pieces of flare on this one. Now, this zombie priest makes a clicking sound, which comes off pretty creepy, but this is actually the result of his tongue being removed from the embalming process. Also, assuming his eyes were removed in that process as well, the clicking allows him to echolocate his targets around the tomb the way bats.
Like a clicker.
Sounds.
When I was talking about Last of Us.
Out of the wall at Layla is very similar to the frame of the corpse hand reaching in through the subway door in the comics when Marc's mental hospital reality warps around him. Meanwhile, Stephen finds some Macedonian language on the foot of the tomb. Actually, if you translate the back half of those letters, they really translate to Alexander, confirming this huge discovery for Stephen.
I think we're looking at the long-lost tomb of Alexander the Great.
Whoa! So, Alexander the Great, you should know this guy. He was the one who,
Yep.
by the age of 30, led the Greeks to rule over one of the largest empires in human history, from Europe to India. Alexander was a lover of Egyptian history who also bore the title of Pharaoh. He founded the city of Alexandria, where many believe after his death in Babylon in 323 BC, he could now be buried somewhere in the city of Alexandria. But his tomb has never been pinpointed and verified. So, unless this is all a fantasy, and that might actually be the case, the implication here is that Alexander the Great, in the history of the MCU, was the final avatar of Ammit, and that Alexander's military feats might have been enabled by Ammit's power. Maybe even the cult-like love that Alexander inspired could have been the same kind of cult following that Arthur Harrow now enjoys. Famously, the saying goes that Alexander wept because there were no worlds left to conquer. Therefore, Alexander might have been that past avatar who betrayed Ammit. He could have been the one who sold her out to the gods, and her detachment from him is what led to his death in Babylon. After which point the Ennead said, Ammit, you have helped out humanity way too much. No one should have conquered that much turf. You a statue. And then had someone stuff that statue in his mouth. You wanted her to be her voice? Eat her! Eat her! I like how on Alexander's chest is a scarab necklace with its wings open, evoking Harrow's scarab compass that he uses to find her, X marking the spot for Ammit's Ushapti, which is buried deep in Alexander's gullet. Alexander's axe that he's holding might have actually been the one he famously used to cut the Gordian knot. But Harrow reveals to Layla that Marc was among the mercenaries who killed her father, and she confronts him.
Talking to you. I'm talking to you, Marc.
Chomp.
Come on, let's go.
Yeah, Stephen immediately nopes into this awkward marital drama. And I just like how the frame breaks the rule of 180 to show this transition, awkwardly cutting so that Oscar Isaac now switches to the right side of the frame. And Marc affirms that while he did not kill Layla's dad, he was still there.
My partner got greedy and he executed everyone at the dig site. Shot me too. I was supposed to die that night.
I'm assuming this partner was Frenchie Decamp, whose name appeared on Marc's flip phone. Promo footage has shown the moment Marc first got possessed by Khonshu. I assume next episode or episode 6 will show us what his backstory was.
Can't
Harrow
wait,
and his
man.
men arrive.
The rest is silence.
Yes, another Shakespeare reference. After Macbeth's Something Wicked in episode 1 and the Romeo and Juliet Verona Light of episode 2, the rest is silence are the final words spoken by Hamlet in Hamlet after his long, drawn-out death from being cut with a poisoned sword in his duel with Laertes. After that cut, Hamlet actually goes on and on for nearly 100 lines. So Shakespeare ends his life with those words in almost a self-satirical tone, like the kid finally shutting up after going back and forth on death for 5 acts. When you think about it, the line is actually a pretty good pun. The rest is silence. But also, the rest is silence. And in this, we can draw a comparison with Marc, whom much speculation has wondered might already be dead. And this whole series is his passage through the field of reeds.
And did it suck for you? Getting rejected from the field of reeds?
Well, that don't make sense, because I'm not dead, am I?
Stevie.
Am I?
And Harrow is now preparing to lay the final nail in the coffin. Harrow does this by shooting Marc twice in the chest, and Marc slowly falls backward, matching the fall last episode when he blacked out. Similarly, Marc is out of control, not sure what form he's gonna wake up in, because he passes out from overhead in just inches of water, but when we cut to him from below, we are now several meters deeper than him in that water as he descends into this sunken place, where now you'll notice the bullet holes are gone from his chest, showing how Marc has sunken from his passage of the field of reeds, now more like that sunken boat and poor sarcophagus in the tank, as we saw Marc reflected, submerged in that tank in episode 2.
Good wordplay, man.
now we find ourselves in this low-budget jungle set of Tomb Buster, a title clearly an Indiana Jones ripoff, even its name a nod to the Tomb Raider franchise. But this scene is totally similar to the opening of Raiders of the Lost Ark when Indy and Doc Ock found the remains of the previous adventurer. Even the music sting is almost note for note John Williams' Indiana Jones theme.
Maybe so, but you've got pluck.
So the implication of this is that Marc might have pulled the name and the heroic expertise of Stephen Grant from this movie, almost like someone in our world manifesting an altar named Dr. Jones, a Princeton archaeologist and adventurer. But notice how instead of the Egyptian moon god, they explore the Aztec moon deity of Coyoxauhqui, who is depicted here with multiple faces, like the split bust of Marc that we have been seeing in the closing credits imagery. It's just interesting that while Ethan Hawke's analyst character later compares himself to the villain of this movie, this Dr. Stephen Grant really does physically resemble Arthur Harrow. His hair,
that's what I thought.
His usage of the compass. Actually, that villain in the movie is never named. For all we know, this Indiana Jones figure might end up being revealed to be the villain of that movie, the kid who looks up to him, the hero. Just like as we watch,
kind of like the opening sequence of The Last Crusade.
The villains and the heroes are, because Khonshu is kind of a dick. This whole twist is awesome. Several characters from the cast reappear, all of them now in this facility. Street performer Crawley is now calling bingo numbers, pulling them from his hat, which he holds out the same way his hat was always laid out in front of him in the park. The bald man fidgets with a Rubik's Cube, almost completing the white side as we saw in Steven's flat. I'm pretty sure that's the tour guide Dylan, Steven's date, sitting at the table behind the bald guy. The orderlies are Bobby, aka Kennedy, the fake detective, while the other pushing us from Marc's point of view here in the wheelchair is Billy, aka Fitzgerald. Their names were a major clue of this reveal because in the comics, Billy and Bobby are the names of orderlies who work in Marc's mental hospital. Also in the comics, Crawley is revealed to be another resident at the hospital at some point, the same way he is here. The red, yellow, and blue bowls of Jell-O are just like the brightly colored powder in all the bowls that Steven saw in the mummification room. Donna is another patient, clutching one of the plush scarabs that they sell in the museum gift shop. Throughout this, we hear the ticking of a clock, which we pass right after we see Donna, but it looks like it reads 11:25, but the hour hand ends in the shape of a crescent moon. But despite the ticking sound, the second hand of that clock is not moving. There's a cupcake cart, just like the cupcake van that Steven hijacked in episode 1. She sketches a hummingbird with Khonshu's skull, evoking both Khonshu, of course, but also the hummingbird we saw in the commune's nature footage. On the dry erase board are pinned some postcards, like the one Steven thinks he receives from his mum. Here, it is Layla who does it, so maybe the mum he thought he was connecting with was actually Layla. There's a goldfish, like Gus, on a stack of books, just like Gus's tank, in Steven's flat that is cluttered with books. Layla appears, chewing on a Turkish delight, just like the ones that the Forger shared with her in episode 3. A lot of sweet snacks in this facility. Notice how she has a little bandage on her pinky finger with a red drawing of a scarab on it. This is a major clue pointing to the possibility that Layla Abdallah El-Faouly could be an adaptation of Abdul Faoul, aka the Scarlet Scarab, an Egyptian warrior who led the Sons of the Scarab who fought against the invaders, Cap, Human Torch, Namor, Bucky, Spitfire, and Union Jack. As other titles have done, retconning Flag Smasher as Carly Morgenthau and Laura Barton as Mockingbird, Layla could be reframed as the successor of a lineage of Egyptian protectors. A man behind them gardens, like the gardeners at Harrow's commune. Layla says he won at bingo, holding up his card that shows the following numbers dabbed: B83, I23, N86, G65, G35, O67, and O55. And throughout this, we heard Crawley call out the numbers B22, G15, T16, O40 something, O73, and N39. Folks, if you've ever played bingo, these numbers make no sense. The B numbers go 1 through 15, I is 16 through 30, N is 31 through 45, G is 46 through 60, and O is 61 through 75. Most of these letters and numbers would not exist in bingo. Also, Crawley clearly said T16, as in Tango 16, and there is no T in bingo. In high school Spanish class, I played a Spanish version of bingo called Tango, where you say, yo, Tango, I have it. Bingo! Then a medicated Marc falls out of his wheelchair.
I mean,
a harness on his ankle causes him to fall on the exact same side of his face that he fell in episode 1 when he landed in the Alps. And
don't show me. Okay, thank you. Don't show me the jaw again.
Those two moments set up this reveal here. In his hand is this hooded and caped Moon Knight action figure, which if Moon Knight ain't a really known hero in the MCU at this point, would there be an action figure of him? Also, another weird thing, what was he dabbing his bingo card with? I didn't see a dabber in his hand. Then on to Harrow's office, Marc sees his painting of the exact landscape of the Alps where Steven found himself in episode 1. But Harrow, now the analyst of this facility, says,
We don't live in a material world. We live in a psychic world.
I mean, Harrow's office even has a bizarre
Yeah,
design.
I mean, look at the,
Tall
yeah,
ceilings,
like they're
brick surfaces,
punched
and
into the
arches.
wall.
There's these headed vases, just like the ones that the priests stored the organs inside of in the tomb. One has the falcon head of Ra, as well as the hippo head of Tauret, and this human head that I think matches the sarcophagus of Alexander the Great. Harrow has a cane that Marc assumes that he must have mapped the Amet staff over, and of course sandals, just like the ones he fills with glass. And notice how Marc sees those sandals through the reflection of a mirror. A housefly lands on Marc's hand, maybe a reflection of his rotting corpse
Yep,
status.
that's what I thought.
Also reminding us of the final shot of Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, when Norman Bates' mother voice said that she wouldn't even hurt a little fly that landed on her. Also on the desk are a bunch
God, I
of
love that
sharp
movie.
things that should not be on a desk of this kind of facility. There's a large curved piece that matches the shape of a crescent moon, as well as a pyramid. And if you look closely at that VHS cover of Tomb Buster, it says, "When deeper in here, Stephen Grant has no fear," which isn't the case in the final shot of the episode, but maybe a clue that Stephen Grant in a place like this is going to be the more heroic figure. Dr. Harrow says,
I can't help you if you don't help yourself.
which is what Harrow said after shooting Stephen in that tomb.
I can't save anyone who won't save themselves.
By the door is another statue, the crocodile head
Yeah.
on it. And as Harrow steps up to Marc at the door, he's just framed with this close-up of his hand on the cane, the way he's been framed in several other shots, like the opening scene of the series. As Marc flees, the hallways just warp. The carts are rolling on their own. The hanging lights just swing back and forth, looking a lot like the swinging scales of Amit's justice. We've also been seeing this hallway in the closing credits imagery, flickering from the storage unit hallway into this one. And if you remember back in episode 2, the way Stephen ran down that hallway is the same way Marc runs down this one. Both of these forming a maze in his mind. In one room, he finds this sarcophagus.
Stephen?
This is the first time that the two altars have actually touched physically, suggesting that they are in the same sunken place inside of his mind. They actually had Oscar Isaac's brother, Michael Hernandez, stand in for him during these scenes. The smooth camera work
Yeah,
makes it
I
look
remember
like we
reading
never
about
cut
that.
Oscar Isaac at the door to
That,
Oscar Isaac
they
coming out of the
worked on
sarcophagus,
scenes
but you can
together.
see there is a hidden cut on the whip pan. I also like here how Marc is dressed in light garb, whereas Stephen is dressed in darker clothes, which not only helps us distinguish the two, but also frames which one of these two altars is closer to Khonshu. Marc notices another mysterious sarcophagus that shakes in another room that they don't open. I am assuming that this is going to be the mystery third altar, maybe Jake Lockley, whoever
Right.
it was who stabbed
That's
those
my
men on the
guess.
roof last episode. And then we end
That
on
still
this
needs to be
awesome moment.
wrapped up. Yes. Hi.
So this is Tauret, the Egyptian deity of childbirth and fertility, who takes on the appearance of a hippopotamus, but with otherwise human features, the kind of features Disney Plus definitely had to cover with a more modest wardrobe. I just love the hippopotamus animation details that they added, like the way her ears wiggle when she says hi, and the way her nostrils flare. She is voiced by actress Antonia Salib, confirmed at the red carpet premiere last month, and she's credited for this episode as well as episodes 5 and 6. So we're gonna be spending a lot of time with her. So what is going on? Well, the Moon Knight comics, especially the Jeff Lemire and Greg Smallwood run that seems most influential on this series, constantly shift back and forth from Marc's supernatural experiences to a clinical setting, repeatedly making the reader second guess what could be real and what could be a delusion. This state of uncertainty is exactly what Moon Knight is supposed to feel like. And there's enough surreality and falseness in both Marc and Stephen's experiences in the outside world and their experiences in the hospital to doubt the legitimacy of either reality.
Yeah, there's
Even
been a lot of
before Tauret walks
inconsistencies
in,
like
no
that
mental
that makes
hospital
us kind of
looks
like
this. There's cupcake
wonder what's
carts.
going on.
Meanwhile, all the Indiana Jones stuff this episode was also super silly and fictitious. So is anything on this show real? Well, I see 3 explanations. First explanation, the past episodes with Stephen and Marc in the outside world was all a fantasy constructed by a patient in a mental hospital, a patient who still suffers from delusions while in this hospital. Kind of like how all of St. Elsewhere was in the mind of autistic child Tommy Westfall. The patient who dreamt all this up might be neither Marc nor Stephen, who, if you think about it, are both pretty heightened.
I mean, there is no
realities,
season
rather more
2 from what they've been
the
saying.
guy in the other sarcophagus, maybe Jake. Explanation 2. Everything we have seen happen pre-hospital is real, but now, after he got shot, Marc slipped into a kind of limbo state deep in his subconscious. that takes the form
I'm
of
on
a
this
mental
one.
Hospital filled with people and images. from
Number
his
2.
life. Like Dorothy Gale after she hit her head and went to Oz, or like Tony Soprano when he had that hallucination after he got shot. But explanation 3. Marc Spector has already been in the process of dying. A long, drawn-out process like our boy Hamlet. And this whole time, he has been passing through the field of reeds. The brooms were the reeds, folks. All 4 of these episodes of purgatorial judgment punishment process for a man with DID to reach peace with his altars before the rest is silence. I mean, I don't know, but this third explanation might help us understand what this hospital now is, why it is filled with sarcophagi and Tauret. Now, yes, the hindquarters of Ammit are that of a hippopotamus. Maybe they're gonna draw a parallel with Ammit being 3 in 1, the way Marc is. And here, Ammit's altars are depicted as separate people. But again, Tauret is her own deity, the goddess of fertility. I don't see how fertility applies much to what Steven and Marc are going through, but there was a connection in the past, if you remember episode 1, when Steven handled some of those plush Taurets while doing inventory in the museum.
Bring those hippos up here, will you?
It's true.
Yeah, sure. Tauret. Hippo. Goddess Tauret.
Which is why I think there could be more to the opening images of this episode. The wall filled with the Ushaptis. Dozens and dozens of gods trapped somewhere. There was that one interesting line from Dr. Harrow where he quoted the villain of Tombbuster.
No tree can ascend to the light of heaven if it doesn't descend to the depths of hell.
Heaven and hell. Above
and below.
Khonshu accused the members of the Ennead for hiding in the Overvoid. Now, I think we could be in the MCU's Underworld, a realm that may end up going by many names in the MCU, maybe even has already been introduced in the form of the Ancestral Plane. This is a subjectively psychic dimension where reality manifests itself in the eyes of the beholder. To a DID patient, a mental hospital with Egyptian flair. Because trapped in him with this realm of Marc and his altars,
God, that moment still just gets to me, man.
That the Ennead banished to the underworld, Ammit, Khonshu, and this sexy-ass Tauret. No tree can ascend to the heavens without descending to the depths of hell is also a paraphrasing quote from famous philosopher and psychoanalyst Carl Jung, who said, quote, "No tree, it is said, can grow to heaven unless its roots are in hell." This was Jung's way of saying human enlightenment is impossible unless we recognize our inner demons that collectively haunt us. This being a reflection of this stage in Marc's hero's journey to descend into hell before he can reach true consciousness. And again, since a stone Ushapti of Tauret appears in the credits of every episode, and presumably also in that wall of cubbyholes with all the other stone Ushaptis.
Yeah, some of these other ones are in that same shot.
Right there may be proof that we are now in the Duat, the underworld that all exiled gods are trapped in, and Marc's soul is currently with them. Back in episode 2, when Steven was handed a pamphlet to seek help from a mental health facility, this may all now be how his subconscious, the subconscious of a DID patient, decorates the Egyptian underworld of the Duat. This show's version of the MCU afterlife, the ancestral plane, Valhalla, wherever the hell Thanos went to. In this case, how this hero takes the plunge into the depths of hell and prepares to fight his way back out of it. And a reminder to check out our merch options at New Rockstar's merch.
Man, it was quite the reveal to like have thrown at us. We'd seen it in the teasers leading up to the show's release and whatnot, so I was waiting for when and how this element was going to come into play, and just that it's so conveniently placed at the time of him being shot just throws so much into question. Has this all been his dying moments, calling back to those little references about the Field of Reeds? You know, has this been his afterlife journey? Could all of this be like him working through stuff and then we flash back, and what we've been seeing up to this point has been in from that initial moment when he got gunned down, when he first met Khonshu. Could that be his moments of fleeting death there, connecting these moments in time? And then, you know, obviously there's this whole thing has been a constructed dream, which, you know, has always kind of been a trope that while it can work and it's effective, a lot of the times it ends up being quite dissatisfying in a lot of ways when that ends up being the case, that everything you watched what didn't actually happen or wasn't real. It can be done like well, but most of the time it's just kind of like, dang it, a little bit of a cop out. It's an interesting thing to always think about, but is that the ending we ever really want most of the time? I don't think so. That's just me. Could be. I know it's probably different for a lot of other people though. Coming back into that though, you know, it's been kind of set up throughout all of the show so far. There's little inconsistencies in times, dates, locations, floors when going through elevators, little details in the back, the shift, change, and alter. I don't know, man. I think what was that third option that he mentioned that seemed to be a little bit, I can't even remember his third option right now. The one that the three of his two solutions. 2 is the one I think is the most straightforward. I think is what we're witnessing now. you know, he is going through these moments of death as he falls into these waters, and he's entering his subconscious free from the shackles of his mortal body at this point as it's fading. And now that they're in this tomb, in this place or whatever, in this connection to these planes here, he's able to kind of enter himself. And maybe through this, he'll find that acceptance, find that strength that he needs to pull himself out of it. And we still have his actual origin to go through. And I expect to see that either in the next episode or the one after. We had the groundwork laid for it as the admission of what happened that day with Layla's father, with him getting shot, betrayed by his other mercenaries, and that was the day he should have died. That was the day he met Khonshu. And after that being just set up in this episode, I think we'll probably, through this vehicle of this mind prison that he's put himself in, we'll find ourselves diving into the past and seeing how this all started. And then that'll bring us into the conclusion in the final episode to see how this all comes to a close. But my biggest question marks right now is that Oscar Isaacs doesn't have any contract after this. So and from what they've said, they did say that, like Hawkeye, this is a 1-season thing. There's no Moon Knight season 2. Now that can change easily. And just because there's no contract right now for Oscar Isaacs to return for anything else Marvel related, that can change. That doesn't mean anything's in stone, but right now it allows us to be very much in the dark as to how this is going to conclude and what kind of future for this character in the greater MCU it's going to leave us with. Because there's a lot of times that, you know, us being in this movie sphere, keeping up with all the stuff on the internet that's floating around, it's really easy to be like, we know he's coming back sometime. His contract's still going up. He's got 10 more appearances to make. You know, he'll be back. You know, we have a lot of those every now and then. But with these Disney Plus shows, for at least most of them, it's kind of been up in the air. I think Loki was the fastest confirmation we ever got, like on season 2. It was like, oh, and at the end, Loki will return in season 2. It was just like snappy. And some of the other ones were just kind of waiting on. WandaVision, obviously, limited series. Falcon and Winter Soldier, limited series. But some of these other ones, they can move on. But from what they've said about this so far, could be it. This makes me wonder if we're going to leave this season off in an ambiguous ending. And I'm wondering how that would leave a lot of people feeling. Leaving it open to interpretation. That'll drive so many people insane, I think. But I really love the twist at the end of this and the way they kind of framed it. And it's just like, with the... it's not actually... the only thing that, like, is like, we've all been in a mental hospital this entire time. The only thing against that is, like, now, Marc himself could be just straight up having an episode and hallucinating, because otherwise it's like, yeah, I think once he went down that hallway and then we saw 2 sarcophagus just kind of shaking in these rooms by themselves, I think at that point reality kind of already broke itself. So it's either complete full delusion at that point, or that's the realization that this reality is false, and just in his head, and a representation of his own kind of prison, maybe even his own limbo, his own hell even. And I can't wait to get the answers, man. It's fun to talk about. But the visual imagery in this episode is really strong. The references, like I called out to, like, things like The Last of Us, a lot of Uncharted flair in here, which also has its roots in Indiana Jones, Tomb Raider, going back to the comparisons to The Last Crusade, both visually and aesthetically, as well as thematically. It's just a lot of fun little nuggets in here. I've been having a blast with this show so far. We're in the final stretch, the last 2 episodes, the 2 episodes nobody else has seen. From what they've said, episode 5 is pretty stellar from what they've said. There's a lot of surprises and interesting stuff in episode 5 from what has been said. Now, I'm not like saying like huge cameos or anything like that, but I imagine that's where the turning point of the episode or the season's going to really be, where everything kind of falls into place and it's going to get wild. I hope. Maybe I could be getting my expectations too high, but right now, just riding the show as it's been a lot of fun. But guys, that's my thoughts on all this. Great breakdown from New Rockstars. What was your favorite nugget that they pulled out of this ether? Did you find any yourself that maybe they missed? Sound off the comments. Let me know your thoughts down below. We'll carry on the conversation after the video. Make sure to follow New Rockstars and follow me on each of my socials. Those are in the description below. Check out my reaction if you have not. But before we go, I want to shout out our channel legends: Manny, Sherritt, Ryan, Karen, Philly Vane, York, Corey, Scott, Margaret, Grace, Mary, Bradley, Nate, Proudy, and Melita. Thank you guys, as always, for your continued support. But it's another one down. We got 2 to go, and I'll see you all in the next one. Take care, everybody.